Welcome to the channel. English Ipes. It felt like waking up from a bad dream, only worse. Even though there was no blindfold on my eyes, I couldn't see anything. I was all curled up, lying on my side. My hands were tied in front of me with something that dug into my wrists. It was sharper and less bulky than a rope. My legs were also bound, but I couldn't say much more, since I was still wearing my work boots. You didn't need to be a genius to realize I was in the trunk of a car. My brain was working overtime, but it was useless. My head was pounding, and the back of my skull ached like hell. The struggle made me feel dizzy. I couldn't do anything. There was no gag in my mouth, but apparently, there was no real reason to scream either. The car thundered over several railroad tracks, causing me to bounce slightly and hit my head and elbow against something hard. Damn it, I was in a trunk, so it could have been anything. After the second railroad crossing, I felt the car turn onto a gravel road. It was rougher than asphalt and much noisier. I shifted toward the back of the trunk as the car began climbing a slope. My brain kicked into gear. Where in this area are there dirt roads leading up a mountain? Nothing clicked. I couldn't come up with any answers. Only a few minutes passed before the gravel road turned into something completely uneven. It wasn't a road anymore. It was a trail. Now everything hurt. Every rock on the path left another bruise as the car drove over it. And then everything went quiet. The car stopped, and the engine was turned off. My body was pressed against the rear wall of the trunk. I no longer tried to figure out where I was. Now I was just thinking about what was coming next. My brain was running at full capacity, but it seemed unwise to say anything. I waited in silence until I heard the trunk latch click. The driver's door opened and closed. Then another door. There were two of them. I opened my eyes just enough to catch the faint light seeping through a crack in the trunk lid. It wasn't electric light. It was something more natural. The trunk lid suddenly flew open, and the beam of a flashlight hit me straight in the face. I squinted in response to the bright light, no longer able to pretend I wasn't reacting. I tried to turn away from the glare as my eyes adjusted, but it didn't help. All right, idiot. Get out of the trunk. I immediately understood that whoever this guy was, he wasn't a friend. I struggled a bit but couldn't lift myself high enough to escape my little prison. You're kidding, right? There's no way I can get out of here like this. My eyes still hadn't adjusted to the surroundings because of the constant light shining directly into my face. I heard my captor grunt a few times, mixing it with some low curses, and then cut the plastic straps binding my legs. With a rough motion, he swung my legs over the back of the car, nearly down to the ground. He stepped back slightly and shone the flashlight at my feet. When I got out of the car, I noticed there was only one man. A shovel was leaning against the side of the car. I quickly assumed it had been lying on the back seat. He was a large man, over 180 centimeters tall and weighing at least 115 kilograms. I had seen him before but couldn't remember exactly where. In his left hand, he held a flashlight. In his right, a revolver. It looked like a .38 caliber police-ish sidearm, not quite heavy enough to be a .357. The big guy pointed the flashlight beam up the slope, where a chain was stretched across the dirt road. I recognized it. It was a fire trail leading to the summit of Mount Neversink, where the ranger station was located. I glanced over my shoulder and saw the city lights. From here, the entire city was visible, and at night it looked beautiful. The fire trail leading to the top was closed to the public. I stood on the mountain road with my hands tied in front of me and a gun pointed at my back. I tried to figure out what I had done to make this guy so angry, but I came up with nothing. He turned off the flashlight, and now we had only moonlight. That must have been the warm glow I'd seen through the crack in the trunk lid. The big guy shoved the flashlight into his jacket pocket and picked up the shovel. He waved the gun in my direction and grunted a single word, "Move." The moonlight was bright enough to walk the fire trail without much trouble. Now and then, it would get darker when clouds or trees blocked the light, but never so much that we had to stop. The path led uphill, and it was hard going. For a moment, I was distracted from my predicament, wondering how the park rangers managed to drive their vehicles up this damned road. The big guy kept stumbling over rocks on the trail, each time accompanied by a muttered curse. It was curious. He was large but clumsy. In some places, the fallen leaves made the trail slippery, which seemed to irritate my captor even more. Stop. That sudden command was immediately followed by another. Move. The flashlight turned on again and lit up the area to the right. Right in front of us was something like a flat clearing. at least as flat as you could expect given the mountain terrain. Only a few meters remained between us and a hole in the ground. Now things were starting to become a little clearer. I had a rough idea of what was coming, though I still didn't understand why .it was a miserable pit. It wasn't square and had a depth of about 1.5 meters on one end, maybe slightly less than a meter on the other. In the center of the pit lay a large stone. What kind of idiot decides to dig a grave on the rockiest hill in the entire damn county? And not just any rock, it was granite. There were hundreds of coal seams in this area where digging would have been much easier. The big guy held the flashlight and the shovel in his left hand, and the gun in his right. He motioned for me to step closer to the hole, and I decided that wasn't a very good idea. There had to be an alternative. He was right behind me as I slowly moved forward. Just at the moment when I felt like he was about to push me in, I ducked, turned, and lunged at him. I was trying to shift slightly behind him to push him off balance. My plan was ruined by an extremely loud gunshot and a burning pain in the right side of my chest. This bastard shot me when I was falling into the pit. I didn't collapse. I just sort of landed hard on my backside. I quickly realized that trying to breathe wasn't a very good idea. But what the hell was the alternative? As I cursed my luck, I noticed that the big guy was cursing and groaning at the same time. Apparently, I had managed to shove him into the pit instead of going in myself. Despite the pain, I leaned over to look into the hole where I had almost died. My attacker had clearly broken his ankle when he fell into my grave. He was clutching his right leg and rocking back and forth slightly. The flashlight lay next to him on the ground, casting a creepy glow inside the pit. It was an opportunity. But an opportunity to do what? There was no way I could run with a hole in my chest. I could barely breathe, let alone walk. On the other hand, he couldn't exactly chase me with a busted ankle. I assumed it was broken. Maybe it was just a sprain, but still. The gun was still down there with him somewhere. That was a problem, a big one. Since the gun had now become my biggest concern, I felt I had to do something about it. When I tried to get to my feet, I coughed up a huge amount of blood. It filled my mouth and ran down my chin. My breathing was ragged and shallow. There was no way in the world I could even think about taking a deep breath. I hesitated for a moment at the edge of the pit, then leapt forward. Feet first, right at his head. I was glad I was still wearing my work boots. My left foot struck the big guy square in the head, while the right boot landed on his neck. I heard a loud crack and suddenly found myself lying on top of him. It hurt like hell. It hurt when I moved. And it hurt when I coughed, and I was coughing a lot. The flashlight was nearby, and it was the first thing I grabbed. The big guy was quiet now. No more cursing, no more groaning. I shined the flashlight into his face. No response. I didn't check for a pulse, but I figured I had either killed him or knocked him out. Either way, it was good news. In the light, I could clearly see the bright red blood that covered both me and the big guy. I knew exactly what that bright color meant. I had a hole in my lung. If I didn't get help soon, I would drown in my own blood. I grabbed the gun lying next to the flashlight, then rummaged through the big guy's pockets until I found my cell phone. And another disposable phone. Climbing out of the pit was easier than I expected. I simply stepped over his body onto the large stone at the edge, and from there onto solid ground. The trail was only a few meters away. I sat down with my back against one of trees growing on the hillside and pulled out the phone. 911. What is your emergency? Hi, I'm on the fire trail on Mount Neversink, and I need help. Sir, that area is closed to the public. Access is for park personnel only. Her voice was young, and it sounded like she was trying very hard to stay professional. I know that, you idiot. I've been shot, and there's a dead man lying on the ground next to me. I need an ambulance and the police. I don't need a lecture about trespassing. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Sir, an ambulance is on its way. I'm also notifying the local police and the county sheriff's department. Please do not hang up your mobile phone. This will help us locate you. Sir? Are you there? Are you all right? No, damn it. I'm not all right. I've been shot. I'm hanging up now. Well, that little episode ended with another fit of coughing. Most of the fluid that came out of my mouth spilled onto my jacket. There was no doubt. It was bright red blood. I made a conscious effort to try to breathe steadily, which was no easy task given the pain. My vision was blurry, and I could tell I was sweating like crazy. The cool night air felt icy as it touched my damp skin. I had a choice. wallow in my pain and suffering, or try to figure out what the hell was going on. That guy had gone to a lot of trouble. There had to be a reason for what he did, a serious one. This wasn't random. It was planned. Why did he have a disposable cell phone? I pulled it out of his pocket and stared at it for a long time. This thing had to hold the answers. Someone else was involved, and the call log might tell me who. But now wasn't the best time to dig into it. I was too weak and out of it. I carefully placed it back into his jacket pocket. I had just started thinking about other people who might have wanted me dead when I heard the faint sound of sirens in the distance. Who had a grudge? Who stood to benefit from my disappearance? If it had been about insurance, the big guy wouldn't have tried to hide my body. They'd need a corpse to claim a death benefit. So it had to be something else. But what? The sirens were getting louder. I didn't know how much time had actually passed, but it seemed they were responding faster than I expected. Flashing lights appeared and disappeared between the trees as the vehicle made its way up the hill. I hoped the medics would arrive first. I shone the flashlight down the trail and saw the big guy's car about 100 meters away. If I could see the car, then the police and medics could probably see me too. 2 minutes later, the ambulance came into view. The last thing I remembered was dropping the flashlight. I woke up with a splitting headache. My eyes were still closed, but the pain in my head was intense. I tried to push away all thoughts and figure out where I was. Then I realized it would be quicker to just open my eyes. As soon as I squinted a little, I got my answer and mentally sighed in relief. The first thing I noticed were the mint green walls, quickly followed by the unmistakable hospital smell. When I inhaled, a sharp pain shot through the right side of my chest that brought me back to reality very quickly. I remembered the gunshot, the mountain, and the ride in the car trunk. It hadn't been a dream. It was all real, but that didn't make it any easier. I was terribly thirsty, but my mouth tasted awful. When I tried to bring my hand to my mouth, I realized there was N4 or some kind of tube attached to it. Not that. I could have reached my mouth anyway. There was a plastic mask on my face. It was either breathing for me or at least helping me breathe. Dad, you're awake. Welcome back. Welcome to the real world. Turning my head toward the voice, I squinted and saw my son, Brian. What the hell are you doing here? Why aren't you in school? Brian was in his senior year at the University of Pennsylvania, and I didn't want him missing classes, especially since I was paying for his tuition. It's okay. I needed a break. I took a week off. Just relax. I quickly scanned the room. It was small, and it didn't seem like I was sharing it with anyone. Thankfully, there were no flowers, but in one corner near the ceiling, 3 mylar balloons floated gently. I finished my survey and looked back at the balloons. Where did those come from? Brian smirked and smiled. She was brought by an Oompa Loompa. She stops by twice a day, and each time she brings a balloon. I tried to laugh but had to cut it short. Who the hell is the Oompa Loompa? I don't know, Dad. I've never seen her before. She's about 5 feet tall and just as wide. Wears a blue uniform. At first, I thought she was some kind of mint girl, or whatever they call them. You mean a candy striper? Yeah, I think so. That was the end of the polite small talk. I started thinking about my situation again. There were questions I needed answers to. I noticed Brian gave a signal to one of the nurses passing by. I assumed they had been anxiously waiting for my return from the dead. Brian. Do you happen to know what's wrong with me? Dad, you were shot. You've got. Let me check. My son started looking for something on the tablet at the foot of the bed. Ah, here it is. You have a pneumothorax. In plain English, please. You've got a hole in your right lung, from where some guy shot you. Yeah, now that you mention it, I think I remember. For a few moments, we both sat in silence. I gathered my thoughts and assumed my son was patiently waiting for the doctor to come in. How long have I been here? More than 2 days. Damn, it must have been a lot worse than I thought. Where's your mom? Why isn't she here? His silence was deafening. I was about to repeat the question, but decided against it. I just looked at him. I watched as my son shifted uncomfortably in the chair for a few moments before answering. She's in jail, Dad. Grandpa Simmons is trying to post bail for her, but he's not having much luck. That doesn't make any sense. Why is your mom in jail? Dad, she's being charged with conspiracy to commit murder, along with half a dozen other crimes. She's also being charged in connection with the death of the guy you stomped into that hole. What the hell are you talking about? Who was she trying to kill? The guy who kidnapped me. No, you killed that guy, but she's being blamed for his death because she hired him to kill you. One of the machines behind me started beeping, and Nurse Ratched, or maybe her sister, rushed into the room. Apparently, the news my son had just dumped on me had a miraculous effect on my blood pressure. She motioned for Brian to leave and then gave me an injection. Before the shot took effect, I started coughing into the mask on my face, which created a disgusting mess. I decided to try to relax a little, and the shot helped immensely. Around that time, a doctor came into the room and gave me a quick once-over. He checked everything as fast as he could, but at that point, I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to take a nap, just for a little while. I wasn't sure how much time had passed before I opened my eyes again. It was darker now, and the hospital corridors seemed quieter. I looked around the room. There were now 4 Mylar balloons in the corner. In the chair where Brian had been sitting earlier, there was an unfamiliar man in a dark suit. He was reading a magazine but looked bored. I took advantage of the quiet moment to inspect my body. In addition to the 4 in my arm, there was some kind of tube in my chest that appeared to be draining something. A very sore spot in the middle of my throat, just below the Adam's apple, was covered with a bandage. My entire torso was wrapped in gauze or bandages. Instead of a mask, I now had a plastic tube inserted into my nose. It seemed to be helping me breathe. The machines weren't beeping, just humming softly. Hi, my name is Stan Trumbull. What's yours? Mr. Suit seemed pleased to see I was awake. I had the feeling he'd been here for a while. I'm Detective Daniel Green. I heard you were awake and was hoping to have a few minutes of your time. Fine, but don't say anything that might piss me off, or they'll give me another shot of La La Land. He moved his chair closer to the hospital bed. Can I have something to drink? No, damn. That was expressive. Here. Detective Green unwrapped a tablet from the table beside the bed and placed it in my mouth. They specifically said no liquids. There was a pleasantly sweet taste in my mouth, but a cold beer would have been even better. Mr. Trumbull, did you know the man who drove you up Mount Neversink 3 days ago? No, he looked vaguely familiar, but I don't remember ever meeting him before. My son said I killed him. Yeah, that's right. Broken neck. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. Don't worry about it. No one's holding you responsible for his death. My son also said you're charging my wife with his murder. Is that true? Yes, but we can talk about all that later. The answer didn't make me happy, but I believed he chose his words carefully. So who the hell was that guy, and why was I even there? His name was Carmen Nenezzo. He was Richard Herring's brother-in-law. Do you know Dick Herring? Of course. Everybody knows Dick Herring, the mattress king. My wife, Darlene, works for him. As soon as those words left my mouth, it hit me, like a bolt of lightning. Darlene had worked at Herring Bedding for almost 10 years. For the first few years, she constantly complained about Richard. He was a terrible manager, a lousy boss, and a womanizer. For the past year or so, she hadn't mentioned him at all. That should have been the first clue. She started working overtime at the store because they had to cut staff. She also began attending a number of seminars and trade shows held nearby. Some of them were at night. Until now, I hadn't thought twice about any of it. I trusted her completely. Mr. Trumbull, do you understand what I'm getting at, or do I need to be more specific? No, unfortunately, I think I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. I pointed to the bedside table, and Detective Green unwrapped another lozenge for me. Detective, I understand the where, when, and who, but could you explain the why? Herring Bedding is falling apart. Richard Herring is broke. Your life is insured for over $2 million. Mr. Herring and your wife were planning to save the company using the insurance payout she would receive after your death. But how were they going to collect the money if they buried my body? Your grave was supposed to be discovered by a group of bird watchers sometime next week. Twice a year, 2 major bird migrations pass through that area, and birding groups are allowed to hike the mountain during that time. How did you find all this out? Did they come in and confess? Not exactly. The cell phone you took from Carmen's body had a call log showing calls to his brother-in-law and your wife. We checked the calls from Dick Herring's phone as well as your wife's single quotes S.ID turned out to be pretty revealing. You're saying you got enough from those phones to charge my wife with murder? No, we got all of that from Mr. Herring. When he found out he was being charged with the murder of his brother-in-law and the attempted murder of you, he couldn't start talking fast enough. He had a lawyer and made a deal before your wife even realized what was happening. As soon as she found out Herring had turned on her, she confessed to everything and tried to blame him. She decided to plead guilty to avoid a trial, but she'll likely face a harsher sentence than Herring. Well, that sucks for her. So was it his idea or hers to kill me? We don't know. And we may never know. On the bright side, you're still alive. Do you actually need anything from me, Detective Green? Not really. I just wanted to make sure you were alright and to let you know what happened. I figured it would be better if you heard it from me rather than reading it in the papers. Do you have any other questions? I paused for a few seconds. Yeah. Who the hell keeps bringing me those balloons? The man in the suit chuckled quietly. Her name's Donna, and she said if you woke up, I should tell you her last name is Dumbass. I gave him a puzzled look, and he smiled. She's the 911 operator who took your call. She said you called her an idiot, and she realized she kind of was. In that moment, she's new on the job and felt really embarrassed for saying something stupid. He must have left the room right after that, because the next thing I remember was that it was morning. Brian was there again, helping me with my first meal tray. Darlene had been denied bail, and sentencing was scheduled for the end of the month. Dick Herring had been released on bail and disappeared. His business was going down the drain, and he had no family. That day, I finally met Donna Dumbass. She was short, stocky, and full of life. Although she was a certified nurse, she had trouble finding work because of her weight. She couldn't work on an ambulance crew due to the physical agility requirements. Calling 911 had been the smartest thing I could have done. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital, but I still needed in-home care for another 2 weeks. Donna was listed among the visiting nurses, and I managed to arrange for her to take care of me. Darlene was sentenced to 10 years, but Brian said she'd probably be out in 8. I never got the chance to see her before they transferred her to Muncie. She never tried to contact me, and I had no intention of calling her. Poor Brian had been caught in the middle of it all, and I promised not to blame him for anything. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. Donna made macaroni and cheese for dinner. Thank you for being with us. And if you're one of those who watches silently, just leave a like. It helps new stories come to light.